Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not formatted as well as I'd like it to be, but nevertheless, we need to start. We're going to cover a few quick things here, okay? Understand the importance, understand the weight, the gravity of this list. This is a decade of professional pro league play that is being considered here. We're talking from the plumber era, the days of people like Khepri in the solo lane, all the way to the golden age of mechanical prowess, where players like Paul and Panatom are battling it out on the world stage, okay? This is a culmination of Smite as a whole. We are going to be judging this by some very important criteria. It is SPL games only. I do not care about what you see on a stream. I do not care about what any player did in a scrim. It is only judged by SPL games specifically, and also understand that tournament games have a higher weight. So if someone like Paul is considered on more gods or is overriding people on more gods, it's probably because he's just better. That's just how it is. That's the reality of the situation. A tournament will be more memorable. I would like to add to this, something that was not included here is the idea of like an honorable mentions list. There might be characters or combos that was only played literally a single time or a couple times, but not enough to meet the full criteria of a iconic pick. Those will be gone over at the end of the list. Number 2, stats are not everything. If we are judging just by stats, it will heavily skew us towards the plumber era. Nobody is beating Adapting and Demi and the original Epsilon and Energy team. I don't really care about that. Likewise, I don't care about win rate that much. It's obviously considered, but the success of a team with one pick relative to their overall performance is more valuable, i.e., let's say that the Season 8 Scarabs lost 90% of their games, but they won whenever Inbound played Circuit or something is very important. Eras are relative. This goes along the line of the stats, more importantly to preserve some of the older players. While no one would be able to contest Adapting in his KDA and stuff, the relative dominance of how good he was at Thor in Season 2 and Season 3 versus the other Thor players at that time is what we care about. If we compared Adapting on Thor 7 years ago to Adapting on Thor today, he's less dominant today, but he is a better player now than he was then. So trying to keep eras in mind and the relative competition level is very important. Number 4, team defining, okay? I am not a player who will ever reward a passenger player. If you are not an integral part to your team's success on a pick, if they are not drafting around the style that you are promoting with the pick, if they are not playing through what you are aiming to do on the pick, I don't give a f. I'll use myself as an example. When I was a rookie in Season 2 Spring on Ullr, in a 28 game split, I played Athena like 20 times and won every game on it. We were not winning because of me. We were winning because I picked a god that camped the fuck out of Omega's lane, and it was just a solo lane dominant meta. So I picked a character that had a global. It's very simple. But that does not mean that I was the best player or the most important player on Athena at that time. And number 5, and this might be the biggest thing here, you are rewarded for defying the meta. A player who repeatedly goes back to a pick throughout their career, a player that takes a pocket pick or a signature pick and reminds people of a certain matchup or a certain way to play the game, or they have success with a character, that is rewarded. If you do something like this and you lose with it, that is not necessarily rewarded. But if the point is, if you take a character like I wrote here, Yemoja on release was broken. All any support had to do on Yemoja was press their relics and press 2 over and over, and you would win with that character. I don't care about players who do that. I care about players who repeatedly go back to a pick as a comfort, as a pocket pick, especially in a tournament scenario, and they surprise people with it, they win a game on it, and it is an iconic moment. Lastly, why me? Why am I the person to go over this list? Why am I someone who can have a say on this? Well, I'm the inventor of this list. I did this about half a decade ago. I've been around for a long time. I'm not the most experienced player. I'm not the most winningest player. I'm pretty fucking high up there, okay? I have played for 9 out of the 10 years in the SPL. I have watched for 10 out of the 10 years in the SPL, okay? I've been around long enough to understand these things, and also, more importantly, I am now the bridge between NA and EU. You are all welcome. Nika in chat, you are welcome. Hey Porsche Coast in chat, you are welcome. As the bridge between NA and EU, I have a pretty good understanding of the contrast between the two metas. I was originally responsible, as some of you may recall, for breaking the curse. In a certain Season 3 gauntlet match, I may have yelled at the top of my lungs, EU fucking sucks, baby, let's go. To only get swiftly eliminated from Worlds by the soon-to-be 2-time champion Energy. And that's just how it goes. And then the next year I bring it back and give North America their first tournament victory in over 2 years. Similarly, the performance from Europe, it's been grim, guys. It's been grim since then. I really put a hurt on you guys, I really did, I'm sorry to say it. There was a lot of NA champions after United, Splice, SK Gaming, the Juggernauts, only to be broken up by the Latin American champion Leviathans, the European champion Kings, and then of course, me taking 4 of the worst players to ever play the game and single-handedly carry them to a championship. It was obviously all me. Okay, I can't do that. Sorry. I had that bit planned, but I can't do it. Anyways, the point is, I've adapted to both playstyles. I've tried to conquer both regions. And if Europe would have me, I'd like to do my best to represent them with honor and with respect, if they would allow me. Here we go. First off, we are going to start with the long lane carry exclusives. For these roles, we will consider 2 players if necessary. Also know that some of these picks haven't seen a ton of SPL play, things like Skadi, so we might not give a fuck about that. A twist that you have not seen. There is going to be a dishonorable mention. Okay? And what does a dishonorable mention mean? A dishonorable mention, ladies and gentlemen, if I can get the fucking color right on this, which I can't, clearly. A dishonorable mention will go to a poverty performance. It will go to a meta slave. If there is only... If you are simply on the list because we had to write somebody, that is a dishonorable mention. And it is important to recognize that. Alright, here we go. Number 1 with Apollo in the long lane carries. Guys, chat involvement is welcomed. Just understand, I reserve the right to absolutely dominate you. You've consented to that by writing in the chat. Now, Apollo is a character that hasn't seen a lot of play in a long time. You think back to the older days, players like Zapman and Barracuda and Young Bay, who I believe won a launch tournament on this character. It really hasn't been that prominent of a pick, actually. Now, me personally, I would say that Apollo was more prominent in a North American meta than it was in Europe. A couple reasons for that. He's a bit more of an early game focused character. He's a bit more of a global rotator, picking up the pace, stuff like that. If I was thinking of maybe a European player to throw in here, it might be Emil. I don't think Emil beats Bara or Zap for me on this. And I think Bara and Zap as the old heads of ADC is a great way to kick off the Apollo list here. So, it's going to be Bara and Zap. Now the question is, which one is first? And when you're talking about iconic tournament performances, I think about the World Championship that, quite frankly, Zap played his best. Where he has a 2v3 play that he turns around on myself, Arkle, and Captain Twig. And he just absolutely guns people down. And then you also have Season 7 Worlds in the quarterfinals. Barracuda against the Sanguine Squad, soon to be next year's world champion on the Leviathans. And he's raw dogging those cats, let's be honest. He is giving them the business. Absolutely giving them the business. Yo, PKM, thank you for the prime. I might turn off notifications for this. Let's do it. I think no alerts. I think we're not doing alerts today. I think this is bigger than all of us, and I think that's important. Okay. Now, in my opinion, the most iconic Apollo player, ladies and gentlemen, it'll be Barracuda. It's not by much. It's by a little, but I think it's enough to take him over Zapman. with all due respect, a rare victory for Barracuda over Zapman. You guys might remember a certain list where I said very explicitly, Zap's been raw dogging him for quite some time here. It's nice to get one back for Barry. Yeah, it's nice to get one back. Artemis, ladies and gentlemen. Now this is actually a region clash right here. There were a few Artemis players that I remember. I played against Vote on Artemis quite a few times when he was on Original Rival. He's very good at it. Panda Cat, of course, with the Blink Artemis back in the day. Young 16-year-old Maxim Yanovich running and gunning, wheeling and dealing, inting and dominating on the Artemis. Guys, I'm going to be biased to an extent, but come on. I mean, in my opinion, one of, if not the best ADC players of all time, Panda Cat. One of, if not his most iconic pick. It has to be written here. It has to be. Now, when it comes to the second Artemis, is there really anyone that close? That's something we have to consider. Let's toss some names around. I mentioned Vote maybe played at a tournament on Rival, I remember. I want to say it was Season 5 Spring. It might have been Season 5 Summer. It was one of those. I'm really not sure. I'm really not sure anyone else was that close. Barra played it a good bit, I'll be honest, but Barra was not a tournament Artemis player as much. Do we have anyone else? No, I don't think Ataraxia played it that much. Zapman played at World Season 7? Did he? He didn't play it against us, I don't think. I don't think Zap's much of an Artemis player either, honestly. I think it might just be Panda, I'm gonna be honest. And I think most metas where Artemis comes in, it's because of this guy. So we're actually not gonna give out a second place. There's only one place, and it is to Panda Cat. Now, Cupid is a little bit of a meta slave ADC. You don't really see Cupid much unless he gets massively buffed. There are many things that keep Cupid out of a meta when characters like this past meta, for example, Hachiman and Anher, when these sort of safe ADC picks with CC immune ultimates are meta, it is really, really difficult to play a character like Cupid. One of the players that I think about a lot for Cupid is actually Vote. I think Vote is someone who has gone to it a lot in his career, specifically when it is meta. I'd say Maui is a player who played it a lot, but I don't think Maui had a ton of success on it. And I'll go further to say, I don't think the difference between Maui's team when he was on or off Cupid was that much. I believe Maui to be a passenger player. He would go with his team, which is fine. But I don't think Cupid defied that law. Shylock, thank you for gifting genetics. We really appreciate that. Also, I need audio to maybe cut out a little bit. We'll figure that out as we go. Ah, there we go. I'm turning off alerts. Anyone who subs, I appreciate it. Well, that's not what this is about. That's really not what this is about. Now, I also think of Panda Cat when it comes to Cupid, but he is an extreme meta slave when it comes to this character. It's not really a character that he loves a ton. To me, it is between Panda Cat and Vote. We did have a lot of success on Ghost on the Cupid meta. I would actually say I'm going to put Vote number 1, and I'm going to put Panda Cat number 2. I think Vote is a player who really liked this pick as a counter situationally, whereas for Panda Cat, this tended to be a character that we would literally just top pick because we thought it was good into every matchup at the time. And it was just Max was always a player to just let it rip, you know? Guys, my throat, I'll be honest, it needs some work. My voice is coming back, but not as great. Guys, Danzaburou, this is clear cut and dry, not even close, not even remotely a conversation. Number 1 is Panda Cat with an iconic tournament MVP-esque performance on this character. And number 2, no one would have seen it coming, but Barracuda last Worlds taking the then Olympus Bolts from Povertyville to Pound Town single-handedly. Barra played great on this pick last year, in my opinion. He didn't have the success that Panda did, and he doesn't have the aggressive pop-off moments, the solo kills that Panda did. But I would say Barra was actually a surprisingly very good Danza. It's a character that doesn't really fit his archetype. You think of Bara, you think of characters like Jingwei and Soul, these characters that tend to be a little bit more passive, a little bit more hit what's in front of you, not as much dive oriented. But Bara really showed the world what he could do on this character. Hachiman might be a character that we consider for a dishonorable mention, ladies and gentlemen. Now, there is a lot of merchant Hachiman players. There are a lot of frauds who like to play the Hachiman, I'll be honest. You're thinking about players who, they play it too safe, you know, they're playing it to protect themselves, to KDA save a little bit. That's not what we're looking for. What we are looking for is a player who's willing to raw dog an alt into a team fight, who's willing to engage at the start of a fight and get in there, who's willing to dash in and do his work. And ladies and gentlemen, I'd say since season 5 and on, there's really not people I think about on Hachiman more than the Zachiman. The Zachiman is an iconic pick for Zapman throughout his career, a character that he would go to swing matchups. One of the most notable ones for me would actually be, we would play a lot of Ullr, me and Panda Cat would in our lane. Hachiman, very favorable matchup into Ullr actually. I'll be honest, Zap was doing us dirty there for a little bit. He would always go to it, and he would really put a beating on Max. It was maybe the birth of the counter matchup that is Zapman versus Panda Cat in the postseason. Something to consider. Now, other players we might consider for Hachiman, of course, Panda Cat and Barracuda, these long legacy, long-lasting ADCs, players like Vote have played it quite a bit. Cyclone Spin, of course, has played it. He's been around the block. I would say this year, Coast and maybe Hardcore are players that I remember playing it quite a bit. Now, the question with a player like Coast is, he only played 1 year in the SPL, and he was a good player in terms of team success. You know, he won Worlds, that's pretty nice. Came third in his first tournament with the Hounds, a very impressive showing by them. Was he better than the rest of his peers by a margin enough to be awarded the second place on Hachiman? And I'm actually going to say he was, because the character is a borderline dishonorable mention. He is a bit of a merchant character. And for that reason, Vapourish Coast, I think, embodied all the things that we're talking about, where he will dash aggressively. The amount of kills this little guy has gotten in lane or in 1v1s, pretty impressive. And you know what? I gotta say it. He's not afraid to int. Even when it makes absolutely no sense, he is willing to ult into a Phoenix that you've already taken just to absolutely throw his life away and say, Dardas, I did it for you. That's what I'll remember about Coast. Now, Heimdall, I'll be honest, guys, there's only 2 people that I'm considering for this in terms of their SPL experience. A lot of ADCs, they're going to be upset about this, okay? It's Panda and Zap, and it's not close. It's just Panda and Zap. And I'm going to put Panda as number 1, and the reason why is because I think Panda has more iconic 1v1 plays and solo kills. I'd say when it comes to the skill cap of what you're seeing on this character, in terms of the crystal placement, the TPs, all that type of stuff. Zap doesn't touch Max when it comes to that. I would say in a team fight or in terms of using the character to neutralize a lane, I would say Zap is pretty good, but Zap picked this character as a pick to be safe, and Panda picked this character to absolutely style the fuck out of your jungler and make them wish they never loaded into the game. They are not the same. That's just how it is. Hou Yi. Guys, this is when my bias is really going to get in the way. I think Panda's the best Hou Yi to ever play the game. I really do. When it comes to mechanical skill, guys, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that there was an ADC better than Panda Cat across his career. I'm sorry. And now, the interesting part about this, and I will also mention Panda repeatedly went to this character when it wasn't meta. It was always a character that we considered picking, and it was always a character that he dominated on. Second, I actually have 2 people in mind. Emilitu and Met Yankee are names that come to mind here. Met Yankee has an iconic moment of the pool player on crack. However, he didn't win that game. It was still probably one of the more memorable caster moments and highlights. I want to say that Emil is going to get the second spot, and the reason is, while Met was popping the fuck off in that game, it was one game. You might see a tab down here. That's most iconic single games of all time. We'll come to that later. Met Yankee might be considered here. But I would ask you, if you watch that game and you don't hear Hindu Man say over top of the gameplay, he's like a fucking pool player on crack, then I'm not really sure what we're doing here. I'm not sure you weight it the same way. Benny, there's many characters like Atlas that are an honorable mention later on that didn't quite have the tournament success that we're looking for. That's what we're judging it by. But there is a place for Atlas in mid under honorable mentions. Don't you worry. All right. Now here we go. Pre-color the text for Ishtar. Now Ishtar is a difficult one. Possibly the most meta-slave character in the ADC role of all time. And for that reason, Ishtar will be receiving a dishonorable mention. We might need to, you know what? We're going to do it on the text on the players, actually, because that looks awful. It might be a dishonorable mention here for Ishtar. We'll do it on the text of the player, like I said. Some players, I remember playing this a lot. Vaporish Coast at the start of the year. Cyclone Spin has gone to it a lot. Hardcore, I actually think, comes to mind as well for me. Hardcore, quite a bit of an Ishtar player. I would say Steve, at the start of this phase on the Ravens, was continuing to play Ishtar in phase 2 of season 10 when no one else was. But if we're going to call a spade, Zap was gunning it the fuck down. Gunning it the fuck down. Absolutely inting. So, I'm not sure how I'm feeling about that. Part of me wants to say that Hardcore was dominant on this pick at the end of Season 9 into Worlds. I think Hardcore was really nice at this character. I did consider mid laners on this, but ultimately I decided that I don't care about a character that's so OP that you're able to flex it into another role, which I think was the case for Ishtar. I don't think there's been a mid laner who's really gone back to it a lot and had a lot of success when the character wasn't already broken, which was the case at Season 9. For me personally, Ishtar is pretty tough. I don't know if I'd say anyone is super iconic. I kind of want to put Hardcore. That's kind of how I'm feeling a little bit. It'd maybe be Hardcore, maybe Royd I'd throw in here, but I don't even know if Royd loved it that much. I'd actually love to go look up the Blues spreadsheet here and see if Royd did play it more than I thought. But I think I'm liking Hardcore here. That's how I'm feeling. You know what? Let's do it like this. It's Hardcore, and it's a dishonorable mention. And I don't know that anyone else is really on this. I need a better red than this, right? Like, it's because it's like inverted, actually. Can I get... I just wanted to make sure everyone could see, but this is not helping. Help? Anyone? What color is this? Third? So it's that one? Can I bold it? That just looks bad, right? Pink? No, I can't do pink. I'm thinking I'm doing this. You know what? What if I just kept the text like this and then I just do that? I think that's fine. Yeah, good call, Paul. Good call, Paul. It's like Better Call Paul. Like Better Call Saul, but it's not. Izanami, guys. Izanami, it's not close. I'm going to say that. It's Royd. It isn't close. And it is maybe one of, if not the hardest, dishonorable mentions you've ever seen in your life. But this is Royd, and it's not close. An absolute crutch pressure pick like no one has ever seen before. Unbelievably crutch. Anytime the character is meta, everyone fucking hates it. Any character with instant wave clear that you can't contest is not entertaining at all. I would say playing this character in metas where, like, I actually am going to throw Cyclone on this. He's going to hate me for it, but I actually will throw Cyclone on this because on Splice, they used to play a good bit of this pick. And he would play it in a time where you could actually kill him in the middle of the wave. Whereas when Royd's playing it in these later seasons, you can't kill them for tanking the creeps. There's too much HP, there's too little damage, too high time to kill in the early game. It's a dishonorable mention, we'll be honest. Cyclone Spin used to literally, in the Season 5 SPL, on his first season as an SPL ADC, first full season, he had played it for a split before that, he would literally run to your Phoenix at level 1 and proxy your wave and not give a fuck if he was killed or not. Freya's not in this list, Nate. She's later. Don't you worry. I have every single god except Pake Kujira. Okay, Skadi. Now, a lot of you are going to say Barra for Skadi. And you would be wrong. Barra didn't play Skadi that much. And neither did Ataraxia. There's a player who made Skadi meta in Season 4, and it was Pandacat. And he also invented going defense on the character second item. He is the only player to bring it into the meta in that way and make everyone pick it. And if you don't believe me, feel free to go watch the VODs of Season 4 Summer and Fall Split. That's just how it is. I would actually say, if anyone went to this character and had a lot of success with it, it is Panda, but I actually think no ADC fully untapped the potential of Skadi. And for that reason, none of them are getting it. I don't think anyone truly appreciated Skadi in the way that she was meant to be loved. And I don't think she deserves someone to carry the mantle of the Skadi player. And that's just how it is. Now, Xbalanque, this one, to me, clear cut. I think it's Barracuda and Cyclone Spin as the guys who would go to it repeatedly. The only difference between Barra and Spin is Spin had more tournament picks and more tournament success on this character. Cyclone on this character is, in my opinion, a must ban at times. You remember things like the Season 5 Splice meta, where they would run Naja and Erlang plus Zeus and Upwash. When Spin just turned out the lights, you literally could not counter-engage their comp. It was incredibly broken for the way that team played. He played an integral part in those comps, and while he wasn't the setup and he wasn't the follow-up, he was absolutely the thing that kept them going. I'd say Cyclone was also one of the more iconic players when it came to playing the macro game of Xbalanque correctly and just one-shotting a Phoenix from across the map when you couldn't touch him. In my opinion, one of the most underplayed and underappreciated ADCs in the history of the game. And I think Spin was without a doubt the best at it. Support exclusives is what we're moving on to. Remember, we got a lot of crossovers down here, guys. A lot of crossovers. Support exclusives on Ares. In my mind, there's no one in North America that could be considered for Ares other than Aurora, period. Okay? I think this pick is more common in Europe. I think a couple players that come to mind are Kalas, maybe Rapper at times, Kanye Life, Murder, depending what you want to call them when we're going back to things like Season 1 Worlds. I would actually say when it came to Dardas is a good one too. I forgot about Dardas. I would actually say when it came to drafting through a player and getting it banned out, I think Aurora and Kalas are the top two in my mind. They had the most tournament success on it, and from my recollection, the most bans against them. When you think of a player like Kanye Life, he got it banned against him, but it wasn't getting banned. In part it was because he was dominating the game, but it was also the fall off between that character and the rest of his pool was so drastic. It was so huge. Whereas players like Aurora and Kalas, they had multiple characters that they could still go to, and you still chose to ban Ares against them because you didn't want to deal with it. And you did it when the rest of the world wasn't really playing it. I remember we played Rival in the Season 4 finals of the World Championship, and we just banned Ares straight up at a point. And no one else played it other than him. And I remember the same for Aurora. Really, no one else played Ares in Season 2, and it was Aurora. I'm going to reward longevity in this scenario. It is NA bias for sure, but I remember Aurora more and Kala second. That's just my personal opinion. I think had Kalas played a little bit longer, I probably would have given him the edge here. But Aurora's been doing this for a decade on this character. I mean, pretty much every single season, this guy is going to this pick, and he looks like one of the best players on it, and he uses it very well. I would say in terms of the best like pop-off highlight with Ares, I'm sure everyone remembers the Kalas Wilfie combo with the Janus portal. But come on. Excuse me. Atlas. I'm gonna hate this part of the list, I'm not gonna lie. I don't see how it's anyone but me and Gamma. It can't be anyone but me and Gamma. There's just no way. I would say Gamma was the first player to really stick to this pick a lot and really believe it. Gamma obviously did not have the tournament success that I did. And in a biased way, even though I believe Gamma should be credited as the original believer, I believe I should be on this because it's a character that I've won multiple tournament sets and multiple actual tournaments with this character. Not even including Worlds this year. I played it against the Kings when we beat them at Masters. I played it against the Kings when we beat them in Season 9 Summer as well. I did lose the Atlas game, I'm going to throw that out. But I did play it the rest of the tournament there as well. I wouldn't credit myself for being the pioneer for sure, but I would say that I am the player who brought it into meta this year and kept believing in it when no one else did. But I would like to say Gamma for sure was the start that opened everyone's eyes to this god is broken. For sure. A Bacchus, okay. There's 4 players, okay? 4 players, maybe 3, that are considered for Bacchus in my mind. Trixtank, Raffer, Neil, and maybe Jeff Henlo would be the 4th. The reason I'm not so sure about Jeff is because I actually don't think it was Jeff's iconic playstyle. When I think of Jeff, I think of Jeff more as being like a peel support type of style. When he was playing a lot of Bacchus, he was just on one of the best teams and he was one of the best supports, but there was like 5 gods to pick from. To me, the character and the player that fit Bacchus the most is actually Trixtank. He did a lot of like weird little invade stuff with this where he would go hog and he would go hog your red and then jump over the wall. He loved that. I remember Raffer playing it a lot, but to my knowledge, when Raffer played it the most, it was Season 3 Spring, and Bacchus was broken. It was literally a Bacchus Sobek only meta, and Raffer just won every game and dominated every game, but his team was also the best team in the world. They didn't lose a tournament for like a year and a half, so I am docking Raffer for that a little bit. To me, it's Trixtank and Neil, is my opinion on this. I think Neil went to this character later in his career when no one else played it. I don't think he always had the most success because I don't think Neil's placements post like Season 7 were ever really that high. But Season 6 Worlds, Neil went to this character and won on it and had a great game. I believe it was the game clinching game, actually, in the finals. Yeah, Neil was just nice on it, for sure. Now, Charon's interesting because he's only been out for a season. I don't think he ever really had that many iconic games. And I actually want to say there were a lot of fraud and a lot of dog shit picks on Charon. I remember Jake playing the character the most for sure. I think he had about a 2% win rate, something like that. He was like 1-30 on it. So, I mean, that can't go on here. I remember Aurora playing it maybe in a couple games here and there, playing pretty well on it. Ronnie played it. Ultimately, I'll be honest, we'll say it, as a KDA saving spectator. Really not a lot of dominant performances that I remember. Ronnie's obviously a good player, but I would not put this high up on the list of Ronnie doing what he does, you know? To me, it's an NA. I'm sorry to say it. They're all dog. It's the same as Skadi. They're all dog. Sorry to say it. Fafnir. Now, this is an important one right here. Fafnir was meta. He came out in season 3, summer, like season 3, late summer, late spring, early summer is when Fafnir came out. He was allowed in pro play a little bit after that, obviously. I remember playing Fafnir literally every year between season 3 and season 6. Seasons 3, 4, 5, and 6, he was played constantly. There were a lot of people who were meta slaves on the character and played it a lot. Me, Kalas, and Emilzy, I know, abused this character a lot. Another player I'll throw out there that played it a lot was actually Jigs, played it a good bit. I don't think it was ever his favorite player, but he definitely played it a good bit. He was just an accurate mechanical player, so I always thought he was good on it. A couple people played it in season 8. I want to say the character got buffed a good bit. I believe, like myself, Jake played it a good bit, actually, season 7 and season 8. And then Genetics and Ronnie played it a good bit. Like, all of the top teams, the top supports there played it. I actually think Kalas is most representative of Fafnir. I also would credit him for doing things like the Gem of ISO and stuff. I think he was pretty good with that. He would be one of the first players that I remember just slamming it as a core item. And I thought it was a pick that they played with very well. And he played very well with it. And I thought for a while there, like early season 5, I literally thought Kalas was the best support player in the world at the time. And I would say Fafnir and Ares are the two picks I really remember him being really good. Yeah, Sprack. Type again. I'm giving Pern best at. Just being blunt, brother. My bad, G. Silver on Fafnir. I actually don't know if anyone's silver. I think there's actually too many. And I would say that most of the players who played Fafnir, like, I think it is my most played character throughout my career, and I do have a good win rate on it. But it is a KDA merchant. Like, I would not consider this a character that I'm, like, proud to go back to, and I think that applies for pretty much everyone. So I'm just going to put no one there. Second. That's how I feel about it. Okay, Ganesha is a banger. Guys, we got to talk about Jeff and Lo on this. We got to talk about him, okay? There's a few players that come to mind here. Jeff, Aurora, maybe Emilzy you might throw in here. Jeff Hindla on Ganesha. Jeff was not a good mechanical player, okay? Everyone knows this. That guy's Ganesha ultimates were fucking crazy. I don't know how he did it. Actually, the best Ganesha altar I've ever seen in my life, okay? He would solo win team fights on this character. He was actually so good on it. I would still maintain it is probably the only character that he played later on in his career where he still had an impact that was like, wow, he's contributing a ton to his team. Like, he was just going crazy on this character. He was nice with it. I'd say Raffer is another one, and Aurora was another one. Ganesha, no, Jeff played a lot of Ganesha in season 4 and 5, and they were still a top 2 team in NA during that. And he was really good on the character. Season 6 was when Jeff was just cooked, for sure. I actually am going to put Jeff Hindla and then Aurora on this. I'd say Aurora, similarly to Gamma, is probably the biggest Ganesha believer. The thing you guys have to understand about Aurora is that Aurora is also a player that is down to just pick the same character over and over and over and over until people ban it, just because he likes his team being consistent with their practice. He was like that with Sobek as well, for example. When I think of Aurora, I think there's so many characters that he was still good at that I don't think the drop-off was rewarded enough, whereas Jeff, like, I think there was a huge drop-off. So I think it's a little bit more iconic for Jeff. I do think Wrath is up here, but I think Wrath has a better character, which is also right here. To me, Khepri is just genetics and Raffer, in my opinion. The question is who's first and who's second. There are, I will mention this for the sake of this coming up. When it comes to characters like Khepri, Athena, Geb, Sylvanus, these support characters that have been out forever, like, of course, people like me or Aurora, or whoever has been around for a long time, like in other roles it'll apply to, we've played everything. This is not an iconic pick for people like me and Aurora. Like, this is a, when it's meta, we're down to play this style, but in terms of like dominating a play style with it and building a comp around it and really having it be like integral to how you're playing the game, this is Raffer and Genetics in my opinion. I actually think Jean is first on this. The reason I think Jean is first on this is because I think Jean was better at doing what I thought personally was really broken on this character, which is abusing the fuck out of his early game like pressure and ability to just shred tanks and do objectives. Like, the way Raffer played the game was as like a true peel support, and he was very, very, very good at it. But I think Jean did that at an elite level, and also abused things like double hunter comps on Khepri, or doing quick like objectives on Khepri, that type of stuff. I think Genetics unlocked more of the map play side of the character that I thought was really good, more so than Raffer. So I'm putting Jean first and Raffer second. I also think, for the record, they both have had a fuck ton of tournament success and pocket picks on this character, but I think Jean is more consistent in his like win rate and getting it banned from him, all that type of stuff. Kumbhakarna is Aurora and Trix, period, to me. I think it's Aurora and then Trix in that order. I don't really remember anyone else playing this fucking character, I'm gonna be honest. Aurora played it a lot in NA. He didn't play it so much when the leagues merged, but he played this character like season 3. They used to run a lot of combos, like him and Best. He would play like Kumba with like Ra and Scylla and things like that, and he would just set up a fuck ton with it. Trix was very similar. He wouldn't do it as much for the setup mages like that, but he would just be annoying as fuck and run around. I would also like to say this is by far the best pick to absolutely make Kenneth lose his shit. Dardes, Coast, Aurora, probably the top 3 when it comes to picking Kumba and griefing, adapting, and rank. But we don't care about that here. Kuzenbo, Kuzenbo, Kuzenbo. Now, a lot of people will say Neil for Kuzenbo. Neil's also had a lot of stinkers on Kuzen. This is something it's important to think about. A lot of stinkers on Kuzen. I'll say it, because someone's got to say it. There's a person who played Kuzenbo in Season 7 and literally made it first pick, first ban meta and soloed the Radiance backline in a tournament game and won a tournament on it, okay? And it wasn't Neil. Just gonna go ahead and throw that out. Just gonna throw it out. It's not Neil. Sorry to say it, and it's not close. But it is Neil first. And then it's me. And then it's actually not close. And that's it. Maui? No one. A lot of people want to say Genetics for this for sure. It would be the most fraudulent pick ever. It was played in one tournament on release after the character got Omega buffed. And I will still maintain to this day, the character was not actually that good. Backliners just physically did not know how to fucking press beads on the alt. And the amount of people I saw boosh beads a fucking Maui alt is crazy. Actually crazy with this character. And you can literally see the timeline where backliners learned to press their beads on the character, and he was instantly horrible. Actually horrible off the rip. No one is iconic with Maui. No one really went to it when it was off meta. No one really kept going back to it and having a lot of success. He was here, you know, then and again, but it was really not much. Excuse me. Now, Sylvanus. Sylvanus. Players, old school players I think about on Sylv. Yannick, Jeff Hindla, Emilzy. Modern day players. I don't know that there's many. I think Bobby played it a good bit in Season 8 and had success on it. I think I played it like 7 times this year and I was like 6-1 on it. but I don't think I played it in many tournaments. I have one tournament I played it, was Season 4 Worlds. That was about it. I kind of think of the older school players on this a little bit. The problem with someone like Bobby is there wasn't a ton of tournament success or iconic games on it in that way, but he did have a lot of, he was good at the character. I would say also Sylvanus will be getting docked points as a pressure crutch. I actually think people like Ionic were very good on the character outside of the lane at just like playing it in team fights and owning and doing that type of thing. Guys, I'll be honest, we're saying Dardas for support. There's only one character Dardas is going to get consideration on for support. The guy didn't have as much success in support as he did in mid. That's just the reality. I think Jeff Hindla and Ionic and Emilzy are kind of who I want to consider for this. I think Jeff had iconic moments in Season 1 Worlds, but the character was beyond broken. He was healing creeps. It was King Plumber era. I kind of think Emilzy is the #1 Sylv player, and the question is who gets it second. To me, guys, how did Emilzy write his name? Was it like this? No way it was like that, right? It was something different. It was like this. Wait, I was right. Oh shit. Too easy for me. Yeah, I'd put Emilzy for this, and then second, I almost want to put Bobby. Okay, if we're going for longevity over a career, it's Mirror Roar. Yo, Snoopy, shut the fuck up. I will ban you. That guy's not an SPL player. Pipe down. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it should be longevity. Like, I feel like Emilzy is the peak, and longevity should be the thing here that goes to it. And longevity would be Mirror, I think. All right, this is where I don't read chat at all, and I think for myself. Give me a second. I think it's no one. I think it was too much of a pressure merchant when other people played it. Like, I think Bobby had a lot of success with it. It was purely a pressure merchant. They'd play like fucking Ullr on Sylvanus. Like, it wasn't interactive at all. You're just so far ahead off the map play alone just from picking the character. Yeah, I just don't think there's much. I think when it came to a player like really liking the playstyle of the character and playing it a lot, it'd be Emilzy. I think Aurora and I played it a lot when it was just like comes in and out of meta to us, you know, stuff like that. I think that's just how it is. All right, you guys aren't gonna like what I'm gonna do here, but I think it's correct. I think it's very definitively this, and I'm actually not open to many arguments otherwise. I think Rangyu was more of an abuser of the character where it was a super meta and broken. I think Jean was actually the best player when it came to using the character post like million nerfs and still making it look really dominant and having his team play with it. I will throw in one thing here. I think last year and then a little bit this year, Jean makes his jungle support play or jungle solo play a very specific way with this character that I think highlights it and lets him do what he does on it. But I would also say that's just the correct way to play the character. Like, I just think he's really good at using the ult to do small things like fucking, you know, block ADC autos on Phoenixes. Like, it's just all that type of thing, you know? And just getting your team to actually play with the character, I think Jean was the best at it. And when it came to just mechanically being very patient and very good with it, I think Ronnie was really good at it. The big separator for me here is that I think Jean continued to go to it this year even after she was nerfed and continued to have it banned from him, where in my opinion I think Ronnie actually abandoned it a little bit and stopped being as dominant this year as he was as maybe prior years. But I would say it's these two for sure.
One if I'm trolling from Professor BM. You can hear the audience. I wonder if there's a favorite.